Hey, what's up everyone, it's Josh, back finally again with another video. I hope you've all been doing well. Today I'll be showing you how I made this cable using a USB-A metal shell, as well as a USB-C metal shell. Thank you for all of your support as I took a little break from making videos, but I really hope you find this video helpful, and thanks again for watching. Here I have enough materials to put together around a 3-foot simple cable. We have the USB 2.0 cable itself, we have shimmer tech flex, and this blue paracord that I'll be using as our sleeving. Going on to the start of the video, we have our USB-C shell. As you see here, it twists off into 2 pieces, and we have that we'll put back together here for now. Let me twist this back on, and then we have our USB-C connector, which is a little different from the other connectors I usually use, but we'll be working with this today. The USB-A shell, very nice and sleek design, and we also have the connector itself with a nice purple inlay. Also, I have around 1-inch cuts of blue heat shrink, and I guess one of the different tools that we'll be using today is this 1.5mm hex tool to use to secure both ends of the shell. If you're new to this channel, make sure to check out the linked video that shows a more in-depth process about making custom USB cables. We'll skip through the sleeving steps to focus on the process of using the metal USB shells. Here we have our sleeved cable. The first thing I'm going to do is find the end that I used to burn the paracord onto the cable, and we're going to snip off the little melted bits to make sure that we have a nice and smooth surface for us to apply our metal shells. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and remove the jacket from the USB cable. I intend to use the longer side for the USB-A side of the cable, as it provides a little more length to work with. And I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the shielding here and expose our wires. Now I'll go ahead and grab our USB-C shell, take it apart, and I'm going to look to remove the little screw out of the circular part of the shell. And then I'm going to slide it onto our sleeved cable here and make sure it slides nicely on. Removing some excess sleeving and removing the jacket from the USB cable as I did on the other side. Here I'll also start to remove the shielding. And we should have our wires exposed for our USB-C connector. Now I think it's a good time to size up our shells and connectors to see where they kind of place on the cable. The USB-A shell has a little ridge where the connector fits into place here. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of eyeball where it's going to land on the cable and kind of see where I need to cut the wire to make sure that the length is appropriate. With a good idea of how long I need my wires to be, I'll start by removing the Tech-Flex sleeving and cleaning this up to make sure we have a nice and clean sleeved wire to work with here. Then I'll go ahead and check multiple times about the length and make sure that we cut off just enough we need to make sure we have a nice connection as well as the shell fitting onto the cable. One more step I like to do is to fan out the wires to see how they'll be placed onto the connector, and then also to make sure that our shell can be secured properly onto the cable. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side, the USB-C side. I find it a little harder to kind of measure an eyeball since it's not fully closed. There's probably like a specific measurement that I could probably use, but here I'm just going to eyeball it and kind of go through the same steps as I did through the USB-A side. So here I'm cleaning off the Tech-Flex sleeving. I'm going to fan it out a little, and I feel like this is a good amount of length to make sure that my USB-C shell will fit onto the cable. Now that I have most of the prep work done, I'm going to get ready to solder our wires onto the connector. This is going to be for the USB-A side to start. I'm going to take off just a little bit of sleeving from each wire to make sure I have enough exposed metal to solder on here. Alright, now with my soldering iron, I'll start by tinning the individual wires here. Make sure we have enough solder on each one of them, then onto the beds of the USB-A connector. Putting both these parts together, grab a pair of tweezers and grab each individual wire. And since they're both tinned, they should smoothly meld together with my soldering iron. I'll post a little image to this video that you should be able to see now about the diagram that I'm using for my USB-A connector. Here we have our soldered on USB-A connector. I'm going to do a little cleanup just to make it a little more presentable for y'all. And this is our time to go to the USB-C side. In case you didn't know already, we're going to go ahead and repeat the same steps we did on the other side to get our USB-C wires ready to solder onto our USB-C connector. If you've watched other videos on this channel previously, you'll notice that this connector is a little different from the other ones that I've used before. Basically, the configuration is reverse from the connectors that I typically use. So just keep that in mind if you're using connectors similar to the ones I use on this channel. Now to put this all together, again, we're going to tin the individual wires, and then we're going to add some solder to the USB-C connector. And once that's all done, we're going to go ahead and grab our tweezers and solder this all together. Now that we have our soldered cable, now is a good time to test the cable, but after that, in my case, I'm going to go ahead and add some heat shrink. I did find that this metal shells have some clearance to secure them onto the cable, so this heat shrink adds a little color, but also makes the shells more secure as I am going to secure them onto the cable. Getting the USB-C shell over the heat shrink is a little challenge. Maybe I could have used a thinner heat shrink or maybe even a slightly thinner cable, but with enough finesse and willpower, I'm able to secure it over the heat shrink and get it over to where we're gonna secure the shell together with the other half of the kind of connector here. And before kind of putting everything together, I do like to use some adhesive. I started using this Loctite. Basically in every cable I've made in the past 2 years or so. I haven't really had to fix any cables after using this, so really good tip if you haven't started doing that already. And here we were going to secure it. It screws on pretty easily. Any imperfections that I've kind of created through the process of forcing the shell onto and over the heat shrink, I just use a heat gun to kind of even out the surface, and it does look pretty clean, like nothing ever happened. Lastly, to finish off the USB-C side, I grab the screw and figure out which side goes into the hole, and then I'll grab my hex tool and secure it onto the cable. In hindsight, I think I could have used a slightly longer piece of heat shrink, but I guess that's more of a preference. I think this does look pretty clean, but in my case, I think I could have used a slightly longer piece. Moving on to the USB-A shell, I find this much easier to work with, as it's a larger piece of a larger surface area to kind of put together. I'm going to go ahead and put some adhesive on first, and then we're going to place these shells onto each other. I found that there's quite a bit of give on the heat shrink, so we can really secure this tight to make sure that this connector does not move at all. And here we have it. We have our completed metal USB-A and metal USB-C connectors, looking pretty clean and shiny. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. And I'll hope to see you in the next one. Make wise choices.